I'm Ron Strickland. This webcast is one of a series in which I'm providing some brief lectures and commentaries on topics from the courses I teach in literature and cultural studies. In an earlier webcast, I've discussed the picture of the wife of Bath that emerges from the narrator's description of her in the general prologue to Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Here, I'm going to examine the wife of Bath as she represents herself from her own perspective, in her own words, in the prologue to the tale that she's going to add to the collection. She was first married at 12 years old to a wealthy old man, and this is not an uncommon situation. Her husbands, being older than she is, have some tendency to die on her, and she's been married 5 times, and in the process, she's grown rich herself and has become the proprietor of some textile mills. And it's clear that she enjoys sex, but she doesn't like to be controlled by men. Her name, Allison, also suggests a connection with the Allison of the Miller's Tale, and she also mentions a friend or a gossip named Allison. And Allison, apparently for that time, it's considered a kind of a sexy name. I don't know for sure why. Her tale, as I said, presents a contrasting view of romance to that of the Knight's Tale, and also in a way to that of the Miller's Tale. And her prologue is what we're going to focus on today. And it may take some time next Monday to finish it up. Her prologue turns into a debate with the religious authorities of the time and their attitudes toward what is proper behavior and the proper role of women in society. And she's been to church quite a bit, and maybe not always for pious, devout, religious reasons. Church was a good place to go to be seen and to get dressed up and go to and wear your fine clothes, and might be a place to find a husband or a romance. And she's heard a lot of sermons, and a lot of these sermons elaborate the writings of a Christian divine from the 4th century, St. Jerome. And St. Jerome is famous for his view that women were inherently sinful, beginning with Eve, and famous for being the Christian thinker, early Christian thinker, who established the celibacy of the priesthood, the idea that priests shouldn't be married in the Roman Catholic Church. He wrote a text called On Marriage and Virginity, associating women with evil and prescribing celibacy for the priesthood. So I've got an interlinear translation here that we can go back and forth between the Middle English and a modern translation of it. Let's just go slowly. She says, well, experience, though no written authority, experience is not a written authority, experience, though no written authority were in this world, experience is good enough for me to speak of woe that is in marriage. For gentlemen, since I was 12 years of age, thanked be to God, I've had 5 husbands at the church door. But to me it was told, certainly it's not long ago, that since Christ went never but once to a wedding in the Cana of Galilee, that by the same example he taught me that I should be wedded but once. So she says, listen also, she says, lo, what a sharp word for the purpose. Beside a well, Jesus, who was God and man, all sorts of familiar phrases, characteristic turns of phrase here. Jesus is God and man. In your experience, those of you who have been raised in Christian traditions, is that a conventional way now of speaking of Jesus? Would you hear that in church? We all know that Jesus was God made flesh, was the only begotten Son of God. He sacrificed him for our benefit. But maybe you don't emphasize it so strongly as to say he was God and man. If he was God, he probably wouldn't be of much interest to her as he would be, since he also was a man. And she's interested in men, we might think, rather more than gods. So he was beside a well, and he spoke in reproof to a Samaritan, a woman of Samaria, who was there by the well. Now the deal here is, the situation here is, Samaritans are looked down upon by Jews, and they're considered to be not acceptable people. And so the fact that a Jew is speaking to the woman by the well, and she's a Samaritan, surprises her, and she wonders, why are you speaking to me? Jesus spoke in reproof to her. You've had 5 husbands, and that same man that you now have is not your husband. What he meant by this, she says, I cannot say. But I ask why the 5th man was no husband to the Samaritan. So immediately, she's misunderstanding what he's saying. What he means is what? How does he define a husband? Someone who's taken a vow. She defines someone as a husband. He defines someone who is a husband as someone whom you have taken a vow with, a vow of marriage, in a religious ceremony. It's recognized by society and so on. How does she think of a husband? Someone you're with, that's very delicately put. Yeah, someone you're with. Someone you sleep with every night, someone you have sex with, someone who's your companion, someone who you've thrown in with in economic matters and social matters, someone you're associated with, all practical matters relating to experience. And so it doesn't occur to her that the deal is the vow, but that's what it's all about. She's been married 5 times, and maybe these old men she got married to weren't interested with her for her piety, her religious devotion. Maybe they had some other interest in her aside from that. In any case, that's not what she thinks of first. So she says, why is this 5th man he's talking about, not her husband? She's with him, right? What he's really saying is, well, you've had 5 husbands that you took vows with, and now you're living with someone without taking a vow. And that's an issue for the established church. Maybe an issue that kind of goes over her head. She's talking about practical experience, not some high-flown religious ideals and laws or prescriptions. Well, how many might she have in marriage? How many men can a woman properly marry? I never yet heard tell in my lifetime a definition of this number. I never heard a precise number. Now, men may conjecture, she says, and interpret in every way, but well, I know expressly without lie, God commanded us to grow fruitful and multiply. Okay? That gentle text I can well understand. And also, I know well, he said, my husband should leave his father and his mother and take to me. But he made no mention of number, of marrying 2 or of marrying 8. Why should men then speak evil of it? Lo, consider here the wise King Solomon. I believe he had wives more than one, as would God it were lawful unto me to be refreshed half so often as he. I like her choice of words there, refreshment. You want to know how many wives King Solomon had? Those of you biblical scholars. I think the number was 700. And on top of those 700, he had 300 concubines. The wife of Bath says, gosh, I could go for that. But anyway, maybe if not 700, what's the problem with 5 or 6 or 7 or 8? What a gift of God had he because of all of his wives. Now, here the translation, the modern translation is, which gift of God had he for all his wives? And the translation is, what a gift of God had he because of all his wives. Now that translation is okay with me, but I find it funnier if I can read it as a double entendre, if I can open up some nuance in the interpretation. Sure, it's a gift from God for Solomon to have all those wives. But if it's a wife of Bath, I think she might be more interested in what a man like Solomon might have for a woman rather than what God had to give to him. And so I want to read that gift maybe as suggesting that, if you'll allow me to descend into vulgarity just for a moment, he must have been well hung, I think she said. No man that in this world is alive has such a gift. Well, maybe no man is as well endowed that I know of. No man is as well endowed as Solomon. Or, well, okay, it's hard to imagine someone in this age having 700 wives and 300 concubines. Well, God knows this noble king, according to my judgment, the first night he had many a merry fit. With each of them, so well things went for him in his lifetime. But he had lots of good first nights. Blessed be God that I have wedded 5, of which I have picked out the best, both of their lower purse and of their strong box. Their lower purse could be their billfold, their purse that hangs by their side, as one did, and also their strong box, their safe. Right? And here the modern translator has suggested scrotum, or lower purse. Very vulgar. Well, she might be interested. Differing schools make perfect clerks, and differing practice in many various works makes the workman truly perfect. Of 5 husbands schooling am I, welcome the 6th, wherever he shall appear. For truly I will not keep myself chaste in everything. When my husband is gone from the world, some Christian man shall wed me straight away. For then the apostle says that I am free to wed. By God's side I swear, wherever it please me. To be wedded is no sin. It's better to be wedded than to burn. What do I care, though folks speak evil of cursed Lamech and his bigamy? I know well Abraham was a holy man, and many another holy man also, and each of them had wives, more than 2 wives. Where can you find, in any historical period, the high God forbade marriage by express word? I pray you, tell me. Or where commanded he virginity? I know as well as you, it is no doubt. But counseling is no commandment. He put it in our own judgment. For had God commanded maidenhood, then had he damned marriage along with the act of propagation. And certainly if there were no seed sown, virginity, then whereof should it grow? Where are you going to get virgins if you can't have sex? It comes down to that. I know well that the apostle was a virgin, but nonetheless, though he wrote and said he would that every person were such as he, all is nothing but advice to adopt virginity. By calling the apostle a maid, she's suggesting that he's a virgin, but it's even more than that. First of all, he's celibate. Is to be celibate the same thing as being a virgin? Not exactly, right? Because you could have had sex at some point and then forsworn it and given it up and be celibate then after. It's not exactly the same thing, but is the term virgin typically applied to men? More often to women. It's virginity is prized among women and may be honored more in the breach than in the act for men. So it's not blameful for someone to wed her, to wed me if my mate should die, without objection on the grounds of bigamy. Now, on bigamy, she's going to confuse bigamy too. Typically, when she gets things slightly wrong, she gets them slightly wrong in a way that is beneficial to her argument, that she should be able to have sex and marry as often as she wants, and she should have control in her life. And also kind of funny, when you take her character all as a whole. Well, although it would be good to touch no woman, St. Paul meant as in his bed or in his couch, for it is perilous to assemble both fire and flax. You know what this ensample may resemble. It's dangerous to put fire to flax. A woman is the flax and the man is the fire, and you get them both together and sparks will fly and fires will be lit. This is the sum of it all. He held virginity more perfect than wedding in weakness. Weakness, I call it, unless he and she would lead all their life in chastity. I grant it well, I have no envy, though maidenhood may have precedence over a second marriage. It pleases them to be clean in body and spirit. Of my state I will make no boast, for well you know, a Lord in his household, he hath not every vessel all of gold. Some are of wood and do their Lord's service. God calls folks to him in various ways, and each one of them has of God an individual gift. Some this, some that, as it pleases him to provide. Virginity is great perfection, and continence also with devotion. But Christ, who is the source of perfection, bade not that every person should go sell all that he had and give it to the poor, and in such wise follow him in his footsteps. He spoke to those who would live perfectly. And gentlemen, by your leave, I am not that. I am not someone who wants to pretend to be perfect. I will bestow the flower of all my age in the acts and in the fruit of marriage. I'm for marriage, not for sex. Well, tell me also, she says, now just tell me, to what purpose were members of generation made, and by so perfectly wise a workman wrought? Trust right well, they were not made for nothing. Interpret whoever will, and say both up and down that they were made for purgation of urine, and both our small things were also to know a female from a male, and for no other cause. Do you say no? The experienced knows well it is not so. Provided that the clerks be not angry with me, I say this, that they are made for both. That is to say, for urination and for ease, for office and for ease of procreation, in which we do not displease God. Why else should men set in their books that man shall pay to wife her debt? Now with what should he make his payment if he did not use his blessed instrument? How's he going to pay his debt to his wife without using his blessed instrument? You have to use your imaginations. Then were they made upon a creature to purge urine? For small things are made for men and women. Also, okay, so you can go to the bathroom with these things, but also for procreation. Okay, that's the deal. Then she gets to Genesis, and we'll come to this. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply. That's Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. Replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. She fastens upon this text, which seems to contradict St. Paul's prescription, St. Paul's advice that you shouldn't have sex. Here's God directly saying, go have sex. That's the one that she prefers. So, to sum up, Chaucer uses the Wife of Bath's prologue as an opportunity to present a critique of the patriarchal order of medieval society from a woman's perspective. In the first part of her prologue, the Wife of Bath has engaged a sustained argument with the Christian Church's tradition of support and defense of the patriarchal hierarchy, the dominant position of men in society. In another webcast, I'll look at the Wife of Bath's description of her own experience in 5 marriages, the conflicts and tensions that arise between husbands and wives, and her efforts to assert some control, some agency within the institution of marriage. But for now, I'll conclude this webcast. As always, if you have questions or comments, send me an email.